At that point, a fantastic thought or the answer to a question flashed across my mind, much like the classic light bulb that appears above a cartoon character's head. I was greatly caught away when I discovered that my third child was not biologically mine, but rather the daughter of another guy. After a 10-week wait, I finally contacted the firm regarding my daughter's DNA test. I called one of their agents and inquired about the delay. As a nice gesture, I decided to surprise my daughter with the test as an extra Christmas present. During the call, I gave all of the information necessary for the representative to locate the exam. After a brief 5-minute wait, the person returned to the queue and stated that the test had been processed. Unfortunately, due to privacy considerations, the company was unable to give any additional information about the individual who submitted the test. I questioned, a little angry, "If you've processed it, why isn't she showing up in my DNA matches?" He reacted with a little dissatisfaction. "Sir, there are various factors that could account for why your daughter is not showing up in your DNA matches. However, I regret to inform you that I am unable to provide specific details about that particular test." In that moment, a profound realization flooded over me, illuminating the shadows in my thoughts. It was evident that she didn't make my list of potential partners since we were not compatible. After the call, I was left completely bewildered. As soon as I hit the crimson end call button, tears streamed down my cheeks. I awoke to find myself resting on the family room couch, curled up in a tight fetal posture. I took use of the precious 15 minutes of my lunch break to connect with my daughter, presuming she was also on her break given that we were in the same time zone. With a thorough understanding of her daily schedule, I was confident that I would not be disturbing her since she normally enjoyed reading a book at her desk during this time. I was happy when she answered the phone immediately away. "Hello, Father. How are you?" she inquired, her tone slightly wary. "My beloved pumpkin, you know how much I value and believe in our bond." Despite my prior statements, I must admit that I am well informed about the present status of the DNA test. I contacted the professionals at Genealogy Gurus, who confirmed that the test was completed about 2 weeks ago. There was a slight delay before she took a long breath that appeared to last at least 10 seconds. "Dad, I get that we need to talk, but right now and here isn't the best time or place for me to be a part of it. Can we please talk later tonight? Also, I would appreciate it if you could have a private conversation without Mom being present." As I walked back to the office, a fog obscured my thoughts, making it difficult for me to concentrate on my work for the remainder of the afternoon at the engineering firm where I worked. Several thoughts and questions raced through my head, all centered on the disturbing realization that the little girl I knew might not be my own kid. With my analytical inclination, I've always recognized the importance of organizing my thoughts and approaching challenges methodically. Being appointed vice president of engineering at Pretty Electronics was not a stroke of luck. It necessitated a planned response to personal and professional problems. Dwayne Pretty, affectionately known as the Old Man, instilled this perspective in me when he personally recruited me from Purdue University to join his expanding business. Pretty Electronics blossomed under Dwayne's supervision and my steadfast support, bringing us both enormous success. It was definitely a gift to have a satisfying career and work with such talented people, and coming home to my loving spouse and our wonderful children was the cherry on top. As our children grew up and established their own families, our empty nest felt a little lonely. But we quickly discovered enough of activities to keep us occupied. Surprisingly, being alone again rejuvenated our relationship and deepened it. As I reflect on the previous month, I find myself reminiscing about a sequence of seemingly inconsequential events that now have profound significance. One particular episode stands out in my recollection. It was a routine Tuesday evening, and my wife and I were watching TV in our family room when her phone called. It was Gianna calling. Ellie looked at the caller ID, answered the phone, and the chat lasted about 5 minutes. Throughout the call, Ellie primarily responded with basic confirmations and negations, but what stood out to me were the tears welling up in the corners of her eyes. After we finished the phone chat, I inquired about her friend's cat's condition. She told me that everything was great, but I couldn't escape the suspicion that something was wrong. It was surprising how interested she looked in Gianna's cat. Gianna discovered the news during a casual phone conversation. Ellie had no idea that I had covertly mailed Gianna a DNA test without any thought. Gianna was the only one of my 3 children who was interested in genealogy, so I decided to get her an online kit. I've been investigating my family history on and off for years, and I found the DNA testing element quite fascinating. I had high hopes that Gianna's test would be an edifying experience, but as it turned out, I could not have been more mistaken. After returning home, I made a determined decision to treat Ellie as I always had, despite my intense inner conflict. As I faced the challenges ahead, I kept reminding myself to address each one separately and with unyielding determination. One problem at a time. One problem at a time. Ellie and I met during my sophomore year at Purdue. Even though we didn't start dating until our senior year, there was an evident chemistry between us. Now, let's fast forward to our post-college years, when we married 31 years ago. Marrying Ellie was, without a doubt, the best decision I ever made. Even after 54 years, she still exudes a compelling charm. Despite having 3 children, she maintains a rigorous exercise routine and possesses an age-defying figure. She is not only a joy to be around, but she has an excellent sense of humor. Until today, I was thrilled at the prospect of spending the rest of my life with this beautiful woman. At around 8 p.m., I informed Ellie that I wanted to contact the old man about a cooperative project and gently excused myself. Rather than making the call indoors, I hurriedly grabbed a jacket and went to the porch swing. I was able to talk to Gianna without worrying about Ellie listening in. Gianna answered the phone as soon as it rang, apparently distressed. As soon as I saw her, she promptly stated, "Father, I apologize for not telling you earlier. Mother requested me not to say anything until she had a chance to speak with you." I calmly stated, "There is no resentment directed at you. Take a moment to unwind. I want to emphasize that I do not blame you. We are both equally affected by the issue." Her heavy breathing resonated through the phone, revealing the great tension she was under. Rest assured that nothing changes in our relationship. I will always be your father, and you will have a special place in my heart, Pumpkin. Over the years, I've always given you unshakable love, and I have no plans to stop, unless you want me to. She was struck with overwhelming emotions and could not hold back her tears as she attempted to explain her ideas over the phone. "Daddy, you hold a special place in my heart that no one else can fill. My love for you knows no bounds. My dear Pumpkin, I am completely confident in your capacity to solve the DNA puzzle and present me with the most accurate facts. I won't bother you with any further worries for the time being, but I'm curious. Have you found any DNA matches?" "Yes, Dad, I did," she sighed. "Amanda Davidson turned out to be my half-sister." "Mandy?" "Mandy, who is linked to Uncle Steve and Aunt Mia." "Oh, wow," she spoke quietly. "I'm sorry, Father. Trying to keep my cool, I informed Pumpkin that they did not need to feel bad or apologize to me. The fact that Gianna's biological father was Steve Davidson, whom my children affectionately referred to as Uncle Steve, was a surprise revelation. He was popularly known as Appellate Court Judge Steve Davidson by people around the world. I was shocked to learn that my wife had a romantic involvement with her employer while he worked as an attorney at Gooey Howe and Associates. It was extremely surprising to learn that this relationship began over 2 decades ago, given that Gianna is now 24 years old. I realized that my wife, Ellie, might have worked as his administrative assistant during that time. Steve's career took an exciting turn after leaving the legal business. He achieved success as a state judge in the Capitol, taking his professional career to new heights. Despite the opportunity to develop with Steve, Ellie remained loyal to Gooey Howe and finally became the office manager. During the time Steve and Ellie worked together, he and his wife, Mia, developed such a deep bond that our children now call them Uncle and Aunt, and their children do the same for me and Ellie. When I was away on business, Ellie and the kids would frequently visit Steve and Mia at their lake house. I never considered questioning this arrangement because the kids routinely mentioned Aunt Mia driving them around without mentioning Uncle Steve or their mother's presence. This realization has left me overwhelmed with frustration and disbelief. My thoughts must have wandered when I suddenly heard Gianna's voice crying out to me, "Daddy? Daddy?" "Excuse me, Pumpkin," I noticed my thoughts wandering away. "Kid, I am grateful for your aid. Please send on my greetings to Drew. Daddy, wait a moment. What's your strategy? While the question was valid, I struggled to respond satisfactorily, so I chose honesty. Dad, I'm not entirely sure. The child paused. Just promise me you won't do anything stupid. A little bit of silliness is fine, but it's critical to avoid any activities that could result in legal trouble or other complications. I'd never considered shooting Ellie before that moment. Nonetheless, I had made a solid pledge to Gianna to avoid any actions that may cause my anxiety, effectively ruling out the use of a firearm. I'm completely committed to keeping my promises to my children, no matter what. I made it my primary goal to comfort Gianna about our connection, while simultaneously determining the identity of Ellie's collaborator. Following that, I had to begin the process of divorcing my current spouse by hiring a new lawyer. It turns out that my existing legal representation is linked to Ellie's workplace, which is clearly not beneficial in my case. After a fruitful appointment with a lawyer, I was able to focus on the case of my soon-to-be ex-wife, Mrs. Clark Walters. There was a distinct chill in the air at home. Ellie would talk incessantly while we were together, possibly due to her anxiety. She seemed to go to tremendous efforts to make sure I was happy, possibly in anticipation of when I would finally discover the truth. I am not really sure. However, an obvious divide had formed between us, and she showed no desire to be the one to bridge it. After about a week, I scheduled an appointment with an attorney. When he learned that my wife was the office manager of Gooey Howe, he became visibly uneasy. Undeterred, I sought guidance from the next attorney on my list, a young woman in her 30s. When I mentioned Ellie's employment as office manager at Gooey Howe, her face brightened up with a smile. This was exactly what I was searching for, someone who would not back down when confronted with the difficult task of representing my wife against one of Gooey's famed solicitors. Following the terrible finding that my youngest kid was not biologically mine, I shared what little information I knew about the affair, which led to the astonishing revelation that she was Judge Davidson's child. My attorney, Marie Robinette, inquired about Judge Davidson of the appellate court. I responded in a similar manner, I added, carefully observing her expression to determine whether I should seek additional legal guidance. She answered with enthusiasm. I'm curious to see how this unfolds, before we got into a detailed conversation about the financial implications. Marie and I were both fortunate to have solid careers with excellent benefits, so she devised a smart strategy. Divide our assets equally, keep our pensions, and sell the house. This arrangement would ensure financial stability for both partners, with me having a minor edge due to my higher income and superior pension. She soon interjected in a gripping manner, raising the possibility of addressing her for a variety of reasons, such as unfaithfulness, the presence of a child, or a lack of respect, creating the impression that she might climb onto the conference table to address the wrongs done to me. I told them that we would absolutely handle the problem and hold them accountable. However, I expressed worry about avoiding any financial harm to her. Is there a strategy to take legal action against the judge? If this is the case, it will undoubtedly complicate matters and result in considerable cost increases. I will handle the issue with the judge in my own way, I responded, possibly in a somewhat harsher tone than intended. Got it, she said. Marie stated that if she decides not to resist, the process could last up to 6 months. However, if she chooses to appeal it, the procedure may take over a year. I told her that there were currently no fixed dates, emphasizing the importance of being thorough and correct. After completing Task 3, it was finally time to tackle Task 4, the ultimate battle. I decided to stretch my expectation for another week to test Ellie's endurance. As is our custom, Saturday night was set aside for our traditional date night, followed by a cozy movie night and some romantic moments. Nonetheless, what made Saturday love so appealing was our ability to finish the day early, allowing us plenty of time to enjoy each other's company. It had been 2 weeks since our previous date night, and just as long since we had been intimate. The discovery of the affair and Gianna had prevented me from participating in such activities. It was intriguing that Ellie never questioned it, implying that she was fully aware of my understanding. She had gotten skilled at projecting a mysterious demeanor. Nonetheless, the period of that was coming to an end. We decided to go to a beautiful French restaurant and have a bottle of wine and some exquisite pastries. Her face was filled with unbelievable excitement, unlike anything I'd seen from her in the previous few weeks. As soon as I got home, I carefully helped her take off her coat, guiding her to the kitchen table and pulled out a chair to ensure she was comfortable. Finally, I said those famous words, "We need to have a conversation." As I poured myself a glass of Jack Daniels over ice, Ellie gave me a slight smile. I indicated to the liquor cabinet, but she respectfully declined. I set my drink down on the table, caught her gaze, and said, "It's your turn to speak." "Clark, it's been around 20 years since Steve and I slept together. Isn't it possible for us to see it as a mistake from the past and move on?" I was happy she didn't try to undercut the DNA test by indicating it was defective, but her attempt to downplay its significance by implying that the passage of time rendered it insignificant? Really? Before we go any further, I'd like to know if both child number 1 and child number 2 are his children. Can you share the timeline of your romantic relationship, which lasted over 2 decades, the frequency of your love experiences, and the factors that led to its end? Clark, I just wanted to make sure that Barry and Katie are indeed your children. I want to make it clear that I did not become involved in any intimate relationships with Steve until a year after Katie was born. Our relationship ended after about 3 years when Steve decided to pursue a higher position in the judicial system and left the firm. After our affair ended, he patiently waited for a year before applying for his first judge position. Why didn't you inform me or attempt to have a peaceful conversation with me? Am I just insignificant and unimportant? I inquired, my voice harsh. I knew giving you the truth would result in catastrophic consequences. It would have resulted in divorce, which was the last thing I wanted. My feelings for you were, and still are, genuine, Ellie admitted, her hands nestled in her sleeves. I said, "It's evident that you preferred Steve. Your behavior indicated that you were willing to follow his lead without regard for me. It seemed like I was only your second choice." She begged, "Clark, I want you to understand that my love for you is sincere. There's no denying how deeply you care about him. You made a very altruistic decision to prioritize his career goals, even while I was available as a backup plan. Maybe you had feelings for me back then, but you already knew how much I loved you unconditionally. You relied on my steadfast commitment and our family to get through the pain of losing him." Ellie gazed down, her gaze focused on her lap. The unpleasant reality was evident, and I was completely certain in my correct assessment. However, Gianna should be considered in this circumstance. It is evident that he engaged in unprotected intercourse with you, and it appears that you were aware of the potential repercussions, which regrettably became a reality. I assumed that by giving you both brown hair, brown eyes, and light skin, no one would be able to distinguish whose child she was. I was confident that you would never deny her parentage. Therefore, I had no concerns about her similarity to me. However, the situation changed dramatically when you decided to send her the DNA test. At that point, I got a sudden realization about a fact I had previously been utterly unconscious of. "Am I responsible for this?" I asked, struggling to believe what I was hearing. "Steve and I had talked about it, but I convinced him that there was no need to worry because you and Mandy have similar physical characteristics. From what I gather, he is still unaware, but I am convinced that Mandy has since informed him. I haven't heard from him in a while, especially after Gianna and Drew's wedding 2 years ago. Gianna is unquestionably my child, despite of others' knowledge or beliefs. I've taken on the responsibility of caring for her. I cherish her and consider her a part of my life. I hope Steve understands this concept and does not entertain any opposing thoughts. If he contacts you, please communicate clearly with him. By the way, I plan to have the DNA of the other 2 children checked as soon as feasible. I believe it is extremely vital to obtain that information for my own peace of mind." "Clark," Ellie muttered in frustration, "I made it clear that the products were yours." "Why should I believe you?" I replied. Ellie was taken aback by my sudden lack of trust, which is fair given her actions, and it was evident that my intention to reveal her infidelity to our other 2 children profoundly concerned her. Nobody wants to be seen as unfaithful in front of their own children. I sarcastically remarked, "So how frequently were you 2 being intimate, and where did it happen?" If you don't mind, could you please finish the story for me? Our close proximity and shared work experiences forged a strong bond between us, leading to a deepening connection. He had a captivating charm that drew me in. His kindness, thoughtfulness, wit, humor, and undeniable passion were truly remarkable. Nonetheless, in order to honor our beloved spouses, whom we cherished deeply, we limited our interactions and chose different. After some thought, it became clear that, despite the fact that the affair was believed to be over, both of you were still involved in intimate times at the lake house while Mia was away with the children. She leaned forward and said, "It didn't happen, I swear, and I guarantee you that we have not been physically intimate since that time." I couldn't believe what I heard. I shook my head in astonishment and questioned, "So Mia knows about all of this and has actually forgiven both of you?" "Yes," I informed you, as we already discussed. As I spoke, my voice trembled with intense emotions, and I confessed, "I'm not sure if I've got what it takes. Clark, we understand that mistakes were made in the past, but it has been 20 years since then, and you were unaffected by the situation. Can't we return to how our relationship was just a few weeks ago? You were my beloved spouse, and I was your devoted partner. There is no need for anything to change." "I have to confess, Ellie, that there has been a significant shift," I said. "Lately I've been consumed with meditating on my own blunders that may have caused you to develop feelings for someone else. I've also wondered if I'll ever restore full trust in you, let alone maintain the level of trust required for our marriage to prosper. You had my heart, but you decided to keep it buried, only revealing it when it was convenient for you. Our union was never intended to be casual. Rather, it was meant to be a bond fueled by profound, passionate love." Ellie's eyes welled up with tears in that moment. It's always upsetting when she becomes emotional, but I attempt to console her. However, this particular incident was rather uncommon. I went to the family room, switched on the television, and left her sitting alone at the kitchen table. Something felt different that night when we shared the same bed. Unlike our usual pattern, we did not sleep close together. Actually, I positioned myself as far away from her as possible on the queen-size bed. She tried to get closer, but I stopped her. Her expression was a mix of surprise and hurt, but I was unfazed by her feelings. As we savored our Sunday morning breakfast, which Ellie had lovingly cooked, I took advantage of the opportunity to discuss divorce. She aggressively increased her voice, nearly to the point of yelling, to emphasize that the affair had occurred more than 2 decades prior. She emphasized that I had been absolutely unaware of it and pushed me to accept that it was in the past and that we should focus on moving forward in our lives. I forcefully responded, "No matter how much time has passed, what you did was still wrong. You deceived me, lied to me, violated my confidence, and utterly damaged our link. These actions are not dependent on the passage of time." I stepped outside to take care of the lawn, abandoning my half-finished meal. It wasn't until Wednesday evening, over dinner, that Ellie dropped the bombshell. Mia Davidson was coming to visit for the weekend. While I wasn't exactly jumping for joy at the news, Mia was a loyal friend who had been through the same heartbreak as me, so I felt it was only right to talk to her. On Friday evening at 6 p.m., Mia arrived at her destination after a 2-hour journey, but Steve was unable to join her. Ellie had prepared a delicious meal of stuffed flank steak and mashed potatoes for dinner, and I had brought a couple of bottles of Merlot to accompany the food. As we sat in the family room, sipping our wine, the conversation flowed easily and comfortably, and it appeared that an exciting evening was about to unfold. Mia began detailing the affair in a collected manner, as if it were a simple history lesson, but as she proceeded, her emotions surfaced, prompting both her and Ellie to cry. Mia recounts how Steve opened up to her about a past affair that had already ended. At first, Mia was deeply hurt by this revelation, but after some introspection, she realized that because the affair was over before she found out, her emotional pain was not as intense as she initially believed. Mia also recognizes that Steve's partner wasn't solely motivated by his wealth, which helped her understand how the affair happened. She also mentions that Steve has a captivating personality. Unfortunately, like everyone else, I only found out about Gianna's existence a few weeks ago. I apologize for not knowing about her sooner, Clark. I couldn't help but think about the times when Ellie and Steve were intimate after the affair ended, especially at the Davidsons' lake house. I wondered if Mia was aware of this, but I decided not to bring it up. It was hard not to notice that Mia seemed to feel sorry for Steve and his role in the affair, rather than angry with him. This made me think that Steve must be quite skilled in the legal field. Unfortunately, Ellie didn't have the same effect on me as Mia, and I wasn't as charmed by her skill to persuade, so I wasn't as forgiving of Ellie and Steve, even if their romance had ended 20 years before. As she reflected on what might have happened if she had left her husband, she couldn't help but imagine how different her life would have been now that she was living with her daughters. Considering the advice to carefully consider the pros and cons of ending a marriage, she was convinced that her life would have been much worse if she had decided to separate. Thank you for sharing your perspective, Mia. It's a thought-provoking scenario that demands careful examination. I'll need to dwell on it, taking into account numerous variables. One thing to notice is that, unlike you, I wasn't aware of the affair. I found out about it suddenly. Ellie was well aware of her mistake and anticipated my reaction, so she thought it would be best for everyone if I stayed uninformed and continued to live in blissful ignorance, which would have worked if not for the unexpected test. After 20 years, I recently discovered that the most important person in my life had feelings for someone else and was in a romantic relationship with them. Later, with a saintly attitude, this person selflessly chose to let go of their connection in order to pursue their career goals, eventually considering me as a backup option. Can you confirm my understanding of the situation, Ellie? Throughout Mia's story, my wife remained silent, paying close attention. Little did she know, I was fully aware of her stolen glances towards me as she tried to assess my reaction. While Mia continued to speak, I made sure to maintain a calm and collected demeanor, refraining from displaying any signs of a reaction that would provoke Ellie. Ellie and Mia were both disappointed with my response to Mia's story. They exchanged meaningful looks, searching for empathy. I shook my head and made my way to the kitchen. I poured myself another glass of wine before heading back to the family room and turning on the large television screen. I made it clear that I did not want to continue the conversation that evening. The two women moved to the living room, speaking in soft voices that carried their message. On Saturday, Mia and I had a chance to talk quietly in the family room. I had no idea where Ellie was, but I consented to speak with her. We ended ourselves in the formal living room, sitting in two chairs hidden away in a cozy nook. Mia started by empathizing with Clark's pain and expressing her genuine understanding. However, she made it obvious that not forgiving Ellie and dissolving their marriage would be a huge mistake for both of them. Mia reminded Clark of their enduring love for each other, emphasizing that this should be their primary priority. The past is behind them, and it would be a painful decision for them to live apart because of an incident from 20 years ago. Given my ability to forgive Steve, it is reasonable to expect you to do the same for Ellie. Mia, I'm not sure if I can find it in me to forgive. As I mentioned earlier, it was you who let me know about the affair, not her. She intentionally kept it from me because she knew it was morally wrong, and I highly doubt I would have forgiven her back then. So why should I forgive her now? She deceived me for such a long time, carrying on an affair for years and then continuing to deceive me for another 2 decades. It's hard to imagine how I could ever forgive. I stood up and exited the room, running into Ellie in the corridor. She could see by my expression that I was determined and unshakable, completely aware of the talk I had just had with Mia. Saturday night's dinner was a rather quiet event, as the women tried to engage in casual conversation, but I wasn't particularly interested in joining in, so I chose to stay silent throughout the meal. After expressing a quick thank you, I quickly put on a jacket and headed to Malone's, my preferred spot for a relaxing drink. I let the duo know where I was going before leaving. As I walked into Malone's, I couldn't help but notice Ronnie, the owner, deep in conversation with a group of customers in a far corner. Instead of my usual routine of sitting at the bar, I decided to take a table by myself. Marnie, the barman, brought me my usual drink, Crown Black on the rocks, and commented that I appeared to have just lost a dear pet. I grinned uneasily, realizing that, while other areas of my life are significant, nothing compares to the value of my dog and my marriage. Marnie came in close to Ronnie and quietly excused herself from the customers at the far end before making her way over to my table and taking the seat immediately opposite from me. "All right, Superman, tell me everything," she said. While Malone's was generally a peaceful place, occasional disturbances could occur in a pub setting. Ronnie, a woman of Irish descent, had a strong presence that demanded respect, and her fiery red hair and freckles were always on display, showcasing her confidence. Moose, her husband, was always nearby in the kitchen, a towering figure at 6'3" and weighing 280 pounds with a background as a Marine drill sergeant. Ronnie and Moose got to know both Ellie and me well, and Ronnie had a knack for accurately understanding people, including myself. Despite my kind demeanor and respectable job, she would playfully warn others not to see my anger, which we found amusing. "I've decided to end things with Ellie," I said. I'd kept everything to myself up until that point, so expressing it with someone seemed like a relief. I was surprised to hear that our youngest kid, Gianna, is the result of a 4-year affair Mom had with her supervisor around 20 years ago. She believes that because so much time has passed and I was unaware of the situation, I should simply accept it and go on. She proclaims her everlasting love for me and want to prevent a divorce. Ronnie was frustrated, screaming, "That dishonest person? That's quite surprising. Are you seriously thinking about giving in and letting her stay?" If Moose were in my situation, he would make sure that I suffered harsh consequences and that the person guilty did not get away with it. I was relieved that Ronnie agreed with me, and her plain and realistic approach to judging problems was rather refreshing. If she had had a different point of view, I would have had to reconsider my viewpoint. "Superman, I think it's worth discussing the significance of respect in this particular situation. Although I once had deep feelings for Ellie, her lack of honesty was not motivated by love or respect. It's unfortunate that she kept you in the dark about the child's true parentage for such an extended period of time." I attempted to explain the situation to Ronnie, emphasizing that Gianna lacked definitive knowledge. Nevertheless, Ronnie flatly rejected my explanation, emphasizing that her decision not to have the child tested conveniently allowed her to avoid learning the truth. Was there any sign of guilt for the affair, or did she simply apologize for the misery she caused? This woman was incredibly talented. I saw that she has never taken the initiative to apologize for the affair, and it appears that she has never truly showed sorrow for the suffering she has caused me. It looks that the only apologies she has provided are for my discovering the truth. "Superman, it's clear that she has already given you guidance on what you should do, so I won't tell you what to do. Apologies, Clark, but I'll take care of the bill for the Crown and Moose drinks this evening, and you will have the remaining portion of the bottle set aside just for you. At the end of the evening, we will arrange for a taxi to take you home, so please hand over your keys to me." I followed the steps that were provided. I arrived at my house around 2 a.m., courtesy of the cab driver, and Ellie greeted us warmly and kindly helped me navigate the stairs to our bedroom. I flopped onto the bed, too tired to bother changing my clothes, and Ellie gently removed my shoes and socks, and I drifted off into a peaceful sleep. During a typical Wednesday afternoon at the office, I unexpectedly received a phone call from my son, who reached out to discuss the issue involving Ellie. It appeared that Ellie had sought the assistance of our children in an attempt to dissuade me from going through with the divorce. Normally, my son and I see eye to eye on most things, but during our conversation, I could tell that Ellie had really made an impact on him, and he was clearly inclined to agree with her. He attempted to lighten the mood with a light-hearted remark. "Dad, if you decide to split up with Mom because of anything she did 20 years ago, it will be as absurd as your fashion choices in the 1970s. But on a serious point, Dad, are you seriously considering divorce because of an incident that happened so long ago and that you only recently discovered? Dad, it's truly amazing how quickly things have changed. Just a few weeks ago, you were filled with love for this woman and envisioning a future together, and now you're thinking about leaving it all behind and facing a lifetime of solitude because of one mistake. Have you truly considered if this is what you truly want?" At first, what she believed were blunders turned out to be a series of loving actions with him, but as time passed, it became a purposeful decision rather than an error. If you discover Linda's infidelity, it is natural to experience a powerful wave of emotions, including wrath and resentment. It's been 20 years and you still haven't captured her. I calmly replied, noting that the physical action had ended while the dishonesty and lack of consideration continued. Sonny, I had thought you'd be wise enough to keep out of this problem and not take sides. Unfortunately, it appears that you have found yourself caught in the middle of your parents' disagreements. I don't see why you would become involved in this situation. My position is unchanged. I am the one who has been wronged, and your actions are just making matters worse. I used to hold that woman in high respect. I looked up to her, but she never intended to be honest with me. If it hadn't been for an accident, I would have continued to admire her until the end. Meanwhile, she just regarded me as a backup plan when the man she actually loved turned her down. Do I feel manipulated? Absolutely. Dad, do you think you might be overreacting a little? As I hung up the phone, he seemed to be in the middle of his chat. When I arrived about 6 p.m., Ellie was nearly finished making a beautiful lunch that smelled incredible. However, her mood changed when I indicated that I wasn't hungry. I casually poured myself a glass of Jack, switched on the television, and fell into the comfortable embrace of my beloved recliner. Ellie went into the room and inquired why I appeared unhappy. Every day seems to be a never-ending series of unpleasant happenings. Over the course of 4 years, my wife was involved in a sequence of sad circumstances that resulted in the birth of a kid by another man. To make matters more complicated, my own children are accusing me of being the antagonist in this situation. Could you kindly contact Katie tonight and ask her not to contact me tomorrow? Otherwise, our chat can end abruptly, as it did with Barry. Ellie glanced aside, demonstrating a continuous lack of comprehension despite her many years of experience, as she continues to draw people into triggering my fury for her own gain. I raised my voice, expressing my concern over the possibility of this divorce not occurring. Given the circumstances of your 4-year affair with another guy and the subsequent birth of his child, it is astonishing that you have a different point of view. You've clearly chosen him above me in your heart. Do you really deny having feelings for him? Wouldn't you have agreed if he had asked you to leave me and marry him? It is clear that, while you have sentiments for me, they do not extend to being completely in love with me. He's captured your heart. I'm just a reliable backup, always there for you since you have my heart, and I'll do everything for you as long as I believe you're mine. You have profoundly injured me, twisted me, ignored my emotions, and now you have the audacity to try to turn our children against me. That was the final straw. Nonetheless, I have no wish to be harsh to you or, more significantly, Mia, and jeopardize Steve's great reputation as a fair and ethical judge. Instead, I will file for divorce due to irreconcilable differences. This will allow us to maintain our own retirement accounts while dividing the house and other assets equally. As Ellie stood up, tears streamed down her cheeks, and I hurled another item at her. I've seen that you haven't expressed regret for your infidelity. It appears that your lack of guilt is a true representation of your honesty. So it appears that your regret stems exclusively from my discovery of the truth. Am I correct in presuming this? As the night progressed, I gripped onto my bottle of Jack, finding consolation and comfort in its presence. The next day, I contacted my attorney and emphasized the significance of accelerating the divorce proceedings. She informed me that I would be able to study them the following Tuesday and have them ready for submission by Wednesday. The plan to serve Ellie was established for Thursday. To ensure that I was present at this momentous time, I instructed my attorney to have her server transported to my home on Friday evening. I contacted Judge Steve Davidson's office and informed his administrative assistant that he needed to respond to me regarding an essential topic. With his extensive knowledge of the subject, I was confident he would answer soon. When Steve eventually got back to me after a few hours, I noted a tinge of discomfort in his demeanor. He appeared to understand why I called, but he was afraid to discuss it while at work. I agreed to pay him and Mia a visit at their home on Saturday at 10 a.m. Unbeknownst to him, Ellie had not been served the night before. However, I was confident that he would be told when I arrived at his large house after a 2-hour ride. Over dinner at Malone's on Saturday night, Ellie dropped a bombshell. Mia had phoned her and told her about my upcoming appointment with Steve the following Saturday. She was intrigued by my desire to have company on the journey and graciously offered to accompany me on the drive. "Ellie, I want you to understand that this visit is far from casual," I told her. "Steve and I have some important matters to discuss, and it would be best if you weren't here. It's important to remember that he is a highly recognized appellate court judge with an excellent reputation. It's even possible that he'll be considered for a future Supreme Court justice nomination. It is critical to avoid any confrontational actions with him, as they may result in legal consequences. And let's not forget that you promised me you wouldn't do anything that could jeopardize his professional path. You have once again chosen to prioritize him over me. But don't worry, I'll stick to my word. I will not do anything that jeopardizes his chances of becoming a Supreme Court justice. Heaven forbid. The performance must go on." After discussing the newest developments in my personal life with my senior colleague at work, I took some time for myself and scheduled an appointment with my attorney to review the divorce paperwork. Following careful examination, I granted my approval. Just as I was about to leave, my lawyer inquired about my plans about Judge Steve. "Why would that be a concern?" I asked with a mischievous grin, giving her a playful wink. "Given my experience managing criminal matters, it appears likely that you will require the services of a qualified lawyer. I've noticed that engineers, in general, seem to be calm and rational, not easily swayed by emotions. However, I understand that your meticulous and scientific approach to work can be somewhat intimidating." After receiving her card, I hastily left the office. The next 3 days passed quickly as our office was captivated by a large project. It provided a wonderful distraction from the upheaval in my personal life. Surprisingly, the old man complimented me on my ability to remain calm in the face of chaos. I told him about Ellie getting served and the expected showdown with Steve before leaving on Friday. I voiced anxiety that things could go wrong and I'd land up in jail by Monday. He promised me of his undying support and even offered bail money if required. With a hard handshake, we bid our goodbyes. As I went through the door, a tantalizing aroma filled the air, heralding another of Ellie's delectable meals. She had recently impressed me with her culinary skills, continually pushing the limits of her abilities. It was impossible to ignore her amazing cooking abilities. However, a sense of shame poured over me as I anticipated what would happen after our great dinner. Our lunches have been more quiet in recent weeks, and today was no exception. However, I made sure to show my appreciation for the delicious meal. It's always vital to express gratitude, after all. After that, I helped her clean up the table, but just as we were ready to go to the family room for our evening TV show, the doorbell unexpectedly rang. It was exactly 7 o'clock. I realized the item wasn't meant for me, so I didn't bother trying to grab it. Ellie, on the other hand, had an odd expression on her face as she walked to answer the door. A well-dressed young man stood on the doorstep and asked if Ellie was Ellie Walters. When she verified, he handed her a manila envelope and said, "You have been served," before hurriedly leaving. Ellie stood locked in place, her shaking shoulders revealing her tears. I moved past her, shut the front door, and gently led her back to the kitchen table, well aware that she had been saddened despite my previous warning. We sat together in quiet for several minutes. She abruptly murmured, "You heartless person," and disappeared upstairs to our bedroom. I chose not to follow her since I knew the hardest part was finished. That night, I decided to sleep in a different bed from Ellie, which was unusual in our marriage. Instead of sharing our customary sleeping quarters, I elected to go to the guest room that we had just remodeled. However, I couldn't get any sleep that night. It was at that point that I finally let go of the lady who, until a few weeks previously, had been the center of my universe, my soulmate, my everything. Despite everything that had happened between us, we had continued to share a bed, perhaps because neither of us was ready to take the final step. But, in my opinion, everything was finally over. When I woke up, I gently prepared for the day, taking care not to disturb Ellie. I dressed casually, wearing a collared shirt, Levi's, and my cherished cowboy boots with metal tips, a particular memory from our trip to see our son in Dallas. I left a little earlier than anticipated to ensure I wouldn't be late for the meeting. The last thing I wanted was to arrive after everyone else. Getting there ahead of time allowed me to rest at a neighboring coffee shop, which I did. At precisely 10 a.m., I found myself standing on Steve and Mia's porch, tapping the doorbell. Mia answered the door with her customary grace, but there was a palpable feeling of tension in the air. As she approached for a hug, all I could say was, "I'm sorry our journey had to end like this." She said nothing in response. Instead, she took my hand and brought me to the den, where Steve had meticulously exhibited his prized possessions and photographs. When we walked in, Steve stood up from his favorite chair in front of us. "Hello, Clark." "Hey there, Steve." Mia left the room with a tangible sense of anxiety on her face. We locked eyes from a distance, forming a bond that felt like family. Steve, an older man with a similar frame, had gained considerable weight over the years, primarily around his stomach. We exchanged secrets, celebrated milestones, and engaged in pastimes such as fishing and hunting together. I treasured our friendship, especially given his outstanding legal achievement. At that very moment, standing right in front of me, staring at me intently, he transformed from a friend to an enemy. The person who had stolen my partner's affection had a kid with her and completely wrecked my life. Anger quickly overpowered me. I roared at him, frustrated. "You have the audacity to hold my wife's heart, you contemptible individual. You also have the advantage of preserving your excellent reputation, as I promised Ellie that I would never divulge this to anybody, and I am steadfast in keeping my word. Unfortunately, you will be unable to keep your advantages." He dropped to the ground, his fists tightly squeezed against his body, uttering agonized sobs that resonated through the air. Mia entered the room unexpectedly, only to discover her husband unconscious on the floor. She raced to his side as he writhed in agony. Despite her desire to deliver consolation, there appeared to be no answer within her grasp. Her sorrow was obvious as she sent a desperate look in my direction. In a panic, I grabbed my mobile and dialed 911 right away. I instantly notified the authorities about a regrettable occurrence that occurred at Judge Steve Davidson's apartment, emphasizing the necessity for an ambulance to be dispatched immediately. Mia grasped my right arm tightly as I swiftly twisted and went for the exit. Surprisingly, when confronted with the possibility of violence against a woman, I was caught aback by her collected demeanor rather than one of frenzy or wrath. She hugged me tightly and murmured, "We understand how important it is to complete our responsibilities." After hugging her back, I left her house and drove home, confident that the police would not pursue me. Mia understood everything and would explain it to her husband once he regained his clarity of mind. The journey back to my place of solace was a truly transformative experience. Something about the rush of adrenaline that coursed through my veins brought about a newfound sense of liberation. It's interesting how confronting the painful reality of Ellie's infidelity seemed to weaken her hold on my heart, allowing me to find clarity and make decisions that were truly in my best interest. While it may not have been the ideal choice for everyone involved, despite my feelings for Ellie, I made a conscious decision to quit dwelling on the affair. I had no control over how it happened or my role in it, so it was time to move on and let it go. When I got home, I went down to the basement to get a couple of luggage before going to our bedroom. On my approach, I ran into Ellie in the family room, and she chose to accompany me to the bedroom. "Is this really the conclusion?" she inquired. "Just like that? Is it really over after 31 years? "I'm sorry, Ellie, but it appears that you are unable to recognize the detrimental influence you've had on me because of your self-absorption. Your deception has stolen 24 years of affection from me, and it appears that you will forever be unconscious of the agony you've caused. Although the circumstances are challenging, I have accepted the situation and do not harbor any ill feelings towards you. Despite any misconceptions, I do not harbor any hatred towards Steve. Eventually, I will find a way to mend things with Barry and Katie. You should consider reconciling with Gianna as soon as possible, as she is currently in a troubled condition. Ellie, please sign the forms to complete the procedure. In the next days, I'll make plans to transport the rest of my possessions from here. There is no need for us to continue talking. If you have any other comments, please see my attorney's contact information on the kitchen table." Her eyes welled up with tears, and her face was frozen in disbelief, leaving her speechless. I gathered my suitcases, walked down the stairs, and carefully placed them in the trunk of my vehicle. When I returned to the house, I quickly collected a few random items before leaving. 3 decades of companionship vanished without a trace in a single moment. Despite my earlier claim, Steve was able to keep one of his eggs, but it required a complicated surgery and a few months of discomfort. I learned this from Gianna, who was approached by Mia to find out where I was. Mia was unable to contact me due to a lack of my contact information, and the rest of the family decided not to reveal this detail. Surprisingly, even after 8 months, I still feel disconnected from the entire family. According to official reports, Judge Steve had a major accident in his den when he collided with the corner of his elaborate desk. This unfortunate incident happened not just once, but twice, and he then fell to the floor. The media chose to describe it as a home accident, carefully avoiding any mention of the specific area affected, which happened to be his genital region. Despite the fact that the incident was sensitive, Judge Steve received significant sympathy from the press. Ellie quickly finalized her divorce, which was recently approved, and the house will soon be available for purchase through an auction. Since I left, Ellie, Barry, and Katie have made no attempt to contact me, and it appears that I will be unable to attend the family Christmas dinner, regardless of where it is held. As the new year approaches, the company is preparing for a significant change in leadership. The old man, who has been at the helm for many years, will be retiring and passing the torch to me. There is a condition attached to this arrangement. I must effectively run the company for 7 years before I can retire, with significant wealth and a generous severance package. By the end of my tenure, the old man will have found a buyer for the company, and I'll be rewarded. I've recently decided to return to socializing, specifically by entering the dating scene. It's been a while since I was last single, so I might need a little refresher on the dating scene. News of my divorce has spread rapidly, and I've been contacted by several of our female friends who have gone through divorce themselves, inquiring about my love life. It's quite remarkable that even some of Ellie's divorced friends have contacted her, expressing their, in my personal and professional endeavors. There are exciting opportunities on the horizon, and I'm delving into new hobbies to keep myself engaged. However, I've decided to give up on genealogy because it no longer interests me. I've already explored and exhausted that particular pursuit.